There, all you viewers out there in podcast land. We didn't see you. We're the Trinity Force LCS Rundown. It's episode 39, the real episode 39. You're over here today, not over there. My name is Machinorum. I am your host for this week. I'm joined by a lovely group of gentlemen this week. We have the one and only Cereal Box.
I mean, ACC dominated yesterday. I'm really happy we get to talk about this for the entire... Oh, wait, this is the wrong sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking about League of Legends today, right?
Soccer or hockey or whatever you're talking about.
Sports ball. I prefer sports ball.
Hand egg. No, it's hand egg. This one's
Hand egg.
We also have Optimus Town.
Who can't count. Because last week was 38, not 39.
You know,
Whoopsies!
it was the Poppy pick. It was the Poppy pick. You were all flustered. I wasn't here to do Poppy Watch. You know, it's understandable. I got you. We also have Sifa,
Who was completely wrong about ESL, and the broadcast quality was so much better this week. Thank you for stepping it up.
You know, really good on them. I had my event canceled, my live event, because their quality isn't reliable or consistent. This is a tea episode, so we're going to keep it nice and mellow. It's Sunday, shortly after 9 p.m. We're on twitch.tv/TForce Podcast. We're also on iTunes and Stitcher. Our Stitcher feed did have some problems recently. If you are a Stitcher listener, you may have found some of our episodes delayed. But that should be all fixed now, so continue to listen there.
We stitched it back together.
Yeah, we put it back together. You can also check out some other shows we got going on. We got Mondays and Wednesdays. We got the T-Force proper. We got OzLOL on Thursdays. We haven't pushed them recently. As soon as the season ended, we just said screw it. Introductions, we don't need you. We don't need you. But listen to them. They're good stuff. They keep the lights on here at the T-Force LCS Rundown. So let's hop right into the games this week. We didn't have too many teams playing, but we have lots to talk about. But let's start off with some roster changes. Not really news to anybody, at least shouldn't be. TSM confirmed Santorin as their jungler. I'm pretty excited about this.
Wait, where did this come from?
What's that?
Where did this come from?
Yeah, he was wandering around in the back of Bjergsen's stream just doing chores at the TSM house. We had no idea that he was there for LOL.
This is news. We have not talked about this yet.
He's not the housemaid?
We've just mentioned it a few times.
I just figured he was off coast because he was, not performing.
No, it's been confirmed. It has been confirmed. I don't know too much about Santorin as a player, though.
He's swole. He is a hot guy 6-pack.
That's it. That's
VIP on Swole. Okay.
He's his solo queue name was Hot Guy 6-pack, or Swole Torin, whatever you will. He's actually a younger guy, just like Bjergsen. I think he actually be younger than Bjergsen, which oddly pegs Dyrus as the oldest member of TSM at the stale old age of 22 or 23.
Dyrus is only 23.
Something like that.
It's weird. I feel creepy and old for still doing this.
But judging by the looks of the jungle talent pool in NA, because with Lustboy and Bjergsen, they weren't allowed to pick up a player outside of NA anymore because they have the 2 out of 5 members that are not Native American or North American players. Native American players. I mean, you'd have a really hard time finding them too there. Dances with Baron buff. But anyway, they had their quota of non-North American players. So
go make that name.
So they
too long for a summer name.
Probably Dances with Baron will probably fit though. But I feel like that's a team player that should be on Cursor Dignitas. But anyway. So TSM had to pick up somebody that was already in North America and already labeled as a North American player. Santorin seemed to be a natural choice because you can't pick up a North American jungler. You had to import yours from Europe, and he happened to be there already. But all in all, he seems to have pretty decent synergy with the team, especially Bjergsen, which is a big factor because they're both younger guys. They both seem to get along fairly well, and they both seem to kind of be on the same page when it comes to stuff. He's not really a standout player, but he's not bad either, so...
Nice. Well, I'm ready for the season to start. I want to see these new rosters start to work out. I want to see the drama. TNT knows drama, and I want to see it.
TSM, we know drama.
Speaking of drama, VG qualifying for the LPL drops all their members. Just boom, picks up Dandy, Hart, and Mata, and just completely swaps that out.
So this is the weird part, because we don't have that much of an eye into the Chinese scene, and technically they still have the other players on their roster. But, I mean, these players fight through the qualification tournament, qualify for the LPL, and then all of a sudden have these world champion Korean players join their team. I'm not exactly sure we're going to see them actually playing in the LPL anymore, which is a big kind of question mark. Also, they have 2 players in every position. Right now they have 2 supports in Hart and Mata. Mata already said he'd rather play in a coaching role for the team, but he's still listed as a substitute support player, so... yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, this is just the continued trend of the great Korean migration to China, and we'll have to see what happens here. But, I mean, they pick up 3 Samsung players, so you can't exactly do poorly for yourself when that happens.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see this a lot more. I mean, we've seen a lot of Korean imports across all the regions pretty much. But in China, it seems like they put a lot larger emphasis on importing Korean coaches, which I think is much, much more important than importing just random Korean players. Because despite the fact that, like, you know, Faker may be, like, the best mid laner ever, if you just threw him on some random scrub NA team, like, he's not going to carry. He can't communicate with the rest of his team in a way that would let him carry. So this team I'm much, much more excited about, because it seems like not only are they going to have, you know, these very high skill players, but also, you know, the infrastructure from the Korean side of things, or at least an understanding of that infrastructure.
Are you trying to foreshadow for communication problems for later in the show?
Oh god, I'm trying really hard to avoid it, actually, because it's for later, but like
We'll wait on it.
Yeah,
that was a mock norm level transition right there.
Yeah, because I was about to say, speaking of waiting on it for later, Joe Miller and D-Man are actually leaving Riot. That's the latest out of the league news from this week. They're moving over to ESL. Joe's actually going to be the editor-in-chief for them. And in his comments across the web, he's said he's really excited about being able to start his own caster team. And D-Man went with him. D-Man lives in Cologne, so a lot of that really makes sense for him. And I'm excited about the talent pool shifting around for that. I love Joe Miller and I love D-Man. I love their casting. It makes it really fun, really exciting. And it is sad to see them go in that sense, but I'm also not opposed to seeing some new talent come in and see things kind of get shaken up. So all the best to them. Shocks. Now I'm a little confused by this. So especially Optimus Tom, I'm thinking you can clear this up for me. So Shocks is now with Riot and will be hosting the EU LCS, but I couldn't really find consensus on exactly what that means. Was she not with Riot before?
No, her and Joe were working for ESL.
I see.
So whereas Joe and D-Man, unfortunately, are not with the EU LCS for this split, Shocks is. Basically.
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
Great.
This is a really weird career move, in my opinion. Like, maybe ESL can offer them more money, but without broadcasting LCS, like, what does ESL really do? I mean,
they've got other games.
Yeah.
They've got other games that they support, and I think it is a money thing. I think what any smart investor is looking at right now is they're seeing esports kind of blow up and a lot of investment made in the infrastructure for it, especially from companies like Riot and whoever backs ESL, the bigger corporation, probably said, here's a ton of money, go build us a top-rate team. And then they fell flat on their faces with the expansion tournament production quality.
Yeah, I gotta say, like,
so
Joe Miller, you're gonna have really, like, anything you do is gonna be better than what's happening right now. So congrats! Right. Like, not only are you getting paid more, you've got a pretty easy job.
Who knows? I mean, maybe he brings that experience and really makes ESL a better place for it. I wouldn't expect anything less out of that. But yeah, I think it's exciting. I think a shift is a good thing for them, at least. We'll just have maybe some awkward casting the first couple of weeks of the LCS coming up, but we'll see. Speaking of awkward casting, let's hop right into the games. Yes. Any opportunity I have to disappoint Mitch is just like I'm just waiting
Cherry
for
on
it.
top.
You could have like asked like how do you feel about the casting, and one of us would have said something, and then you could have transitioned. But it's great because you just talk to yourself, and it just makes me laugh every time.
Just keeping it
What we
You
just
don't-
talked about,
you don't
non
try-
sequitur.
keeping it moving.
Remember
And
that
so,
thing I just said literally right now? Well, here's something else that's kind of like that.
Is this Monty Python? Is this now for something completely different? Except we're at least staying within the League of Legends scene.
It's not completely different. It's Reason Gaming versus Different Dimension. So you guys want to talk so much? Take it away. I'm all ears. Tell me a story.
Just a moment of silence for how hard Box just got wrecked there.
And Box is gone.
Okay, right. So I'll start this one up. So first off, let's just start with the results so you can kind of understand why I'm about to talk just a ton of shit about Different Dimension. But they got 2-0'd. Straight up, like just totally and absolutely crushed. And I think for the most part, this is probably the nicest thing I'm going to say, is that it's because they were just outclassed as a team. Like Reason Gaming is just clearly the better team here. But what we saw game one was Magebane basically getting solo killed 3 times in a row. Like just wrecked. Absolutely. And to be fair, he's playing Ahri against Fizz, and Fizz is a character who like may not do anything for the first 7 levels, but then can just 100 to 0 you. So obviously a tough matchup, but not really an excuse when you're a professional player. On top of
They're not
that,
professional players yet.
well, semi-professional players. If you want to be a professional player, it doesn't really work. The other thing that I saw was like this first game, they picked this sort of awkward pick comp. You've got this Rammus jungle, you got this Maokai top. I guess it's a pick comp because it doesn't really seem like it has an amazing team fight. You've got 2 tanks, which is cool, but you also don't have amazing damage sources either. So when you pick that Ahri, it just makes me think that what you're looking for is those picks. The downside is like enemy team has Lee Sin, enemy team gets a lead early game and just has absolute vision control. And for a pick comp to work, you really need superior warding. Like you need to outposition and like get those picks in a clever fashion, and you really can't do that if the enemy team is controlling vision much, much better, and they did. And so they pretty much just got wrecked game one because they couldn't keep up, and they just got just outperformed generally in 1v1 scenarios and in small skirmishes, and especially because their team fight just didn't really carry through because of like the awkward comp that they picked. And then game two, before I like go too far, does anyone else have anything to say about game one?
I'm pretty amazed that the Reddit post-game match says that Different Dimension got 16 towers in game 1, which I'm going to guess is probably a typo considering you can only get 11. But if they did, then that's really
Did they have an
impressive.
Azir?
I was to say, was there an Azir? Because that can mess some
Actually
things
would be
up.
great.
That might have improved their really bad team comp, let's be honest.
I don't
They
know, like
put towers back together and then just knock them down again.
like watching over game one very, very quickly because I went through the VOD very briefly to catch up on this game because it seemed like Reason Gaming pretty much had control of this one. I was just kind of like scratching my head and trying to figure out what happened to Different Dimension between last week where they beat the number 1 EUS ladder team Sparta and this week where they just looked like they didn't know what to do. Like take AD carry Dominant. He lived up to his name in the series against Sparta. He was like 12-1-6 on Corki in the first game, and I believe like some odd number around 10 kills and 0 deaths in the next game. This game, not really a factor. Like it could have been chalked up to the fact that they did not play to the strengths of their team composition. But I mean, when they're like Sifa kind of said, the big thing was the mid lane matchup just kind of set tone for the rest of the match. It was kind of like they got outclassed on an individual level by these players on Reason Gaming, who have been around and playing with each other for quite some time at this point now.
Yeah, and moving on to game two, like we saw again that this time I think they picked a way better team comp, to their credit, Different Dimension. A lot more of a wombo comp here. We saw a lot safer mid lane pick as well. We got this J4 and this Orianna pick coming in, and so much better team fight, much easier comp to run, like much less macro intensive, much less reliant on vision control. But then at the same time, like this entire game, I think their performance was even worse than game one. We saw the moment that I remember the best is this is the first double kill, and you'll see this in the game. You'll see Vayne pushing in top lane with Aurelia just sitting under tower, and Nami is just sitting next to her, just sitting there. And I'm not saying that like she needs to go and roam, but she should be poking or she should be warding or she should be doing something in her lane, and she sits there. And meanwhile, while this is happening, you see J4 and Gnar immediately go on the Lee Sin on Reason Gaming. And, Lee Sin, to be fair, outplays mechanically and gets a kill and walks away. But then they overextend and Gnar dies as well. And part of this is because Reason rotates so well. But the other thing is we still have this Nami sitting in top lane doing nothing. And keep in mind, like, this kill, this second kill and this first kill happened right below Baron, and she's in top lane. So this is a gap that you can easily close. And if you had like any map awareness at all, like, you would have seen this coming. And that right there, like, sets the game off right away. Lee Sin gets ahead, gets a sightstone early, more vision control. Now their team fight comp, they continue to fight in like these awkward situations, letting Reason get picks. And we just basically watched Different Dimension get just picked apart, basically. Just fight these little 2v2s, these little 3v3s, 4v2s, whatever. But they never got to fight the team fight they wanted. Mm-hmm. And when they did, they were way too far behind.
It was just like a cohesive unit playing against a team that looked like what we kind of thought Different Dimension was going to look like when they joined the tournament. Now, this could be due in part to maybe like in the first week, Sparta had a lack of preparation. Maybe Sparta just was climbing the ladder at different times than the teams that were obviously better than they were at this point, and they just wound up getting more LP that way. And that's why Different Dimension looks so good, because they played against a technically lesser team who had a higher spot because of the way the challenger ladder worked out. But in this matchup, like, it was like we mentioned before, it was Reason Gaming being a cohesive unit, using their pick composition properly, and being able to take these skirmishes and never letting Different Dimension use their big AoE teamfight composition. And I feel like that's actually kind of a theme that went through a lot of these games. There are a lot of compositions that were not able to utilize that strong AoE, like that Wombo combo, Jarvan Orianna, two big perpetrators of that one. And a lot of these teams that wanted to go towards this objective, like, all right, we're losing out on vision and objective controls. Let's go for something that will dominate a team fight so we can really establish control of that. We're losing out to the teams that were able to counteract the team play rather than just the play on the individual basis. And I think this is one of the biggest examples here. Reason Gaming, better cohesive unit than Different Dimension, was able to pick apart a team fight composition using one that was not a team fight composition, which is, it's like the rock, paper, scissors of League of Legends. You wind up having a team fight composition, usually winds up losing to something like a split push composition. A split push composition loses to a pick composition. Pick composition should lose to a team fight composition because everybody should be able to jump on the people that are trying to pick people apart. But when you have better vision control, when you have a better team atmosphere, a team mechanic, when you're someone like Reason Gaming, you're able to capitalize on the misplays Different Dimension was doing here.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's not even like that they were team fighting and, messing it up. It's that they weren't team fighting at all. Mm-hmm. Like, it just wasn't happening.
Reason wasn't letting them. That was one of the big things, too.
Yeah. And I think that pretty much accurately sums up the series. I mean, that was it. I mean, one team got outplayed. Magebane was outclassed in the mid lane. Just bad team comp. Wild Panda, their support, I was also just not impressed with. Like I said, that Nami play was one thing that was glaringly wrong for me, but like the whole series, he didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. Not in the sense that mechanically, like he was very there mechanically in the team fights that did happen, but that he just wasn't aware of a lot of the macro game things that supports need to be on top of.
Well, moving on to a game set that technical difficulties, not really sure what fully went on with this one, but we have H2K versus Melon Cats, which we only really have one game to look at here.
That's all you really need to sum up how we thought this series was going to go. So, as much as we would have...
such a cool logo.
Second best logo in the EULCS. Second list logo in the almost EULCS, behind Unicorns of Love. But, I mean, we talked about on the last podcast about how it was Melon Cats are definitely going to be fighting an uphill battle against H2K, who are, besides Millennium going into this weekend, one of the favorites to make it into the LCS. I mean, the roster, I see Box already smirking about that one over there. We'll get to that later. But, I mean, this was another case of just H2K being all across the board a better team than Melon Cats. Melon Cats, of course, lost their top laner, got a replacement, were able to eke out a win last week against a team from the EU Northeast side of things, and they came into this matchup heavily heavily at a disadvantage, and it just kind of showed. Their lanes were losing in CS, even when ganks and movement across the map wasn't happening. H2K just outclassed them, and then when it wound up getting to the point where map movements and objective control was extremely important, H2K just kind of was like, this is a textbook how you play the game of League of Legends against your opponent, and this is how your opponent doesn't know how to respond to anything. You're able to do whatever you want.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, I think H2K was also playing really cautious. I think they could have pushed their advantage a lot harder. But, like, to put things in perspective, I mean, Rumble in the top lane was 30 CS ahead at 10 minutes and 40 by 13 and in Rumble versus Maokai, which should be a fine lane for Maokai to farm. I mean, Rumble casts spells, Maokai's going to heal off of it. It's not a good matchup by any means, but Rumble didn't need to ult to get that advantage. Like, Rumble didn't utilize any part of his kit, you know, like, or abuse any part of his kit to the point where I was really think that there needed to be a 30 differential at 10 minutes. Like, just absurd. A 1k gold lead from just farm around that point.
It was just really just H2K showing why they were a favorite coming into the tournament. Like, it's really heartbreaking because the epic tail of Gilius has hit yet another speed bump, but that means the epic tail can live on at this point.
If he ever makes it to LCS, we're done. There's no more Gilius. I don't care anymore. But as long as he's not in LCS, he's entertaining.
Well, I mean,
So-
it's not surprising to see another experienced team that's been together for a while just kind of rolling and inexperienced put together for the latter team. I mean, it's the same thing happened with Reason versus Different Dimension, now with H2K versus Melon Cats. Like, H2K was real close. I mean, they lost in the promotion tournament, but they've been together for a while and have played on this kind of stage before, and stages beyond it. So, I mean, it's obvious why they're a favorite. And I think from looking, it looks like Gilius's computer may have, I don't know, blown up or something. And
Yeah, do we know what happened with game 2 there? Because it did
You know
go
what
in.
could-
There's
It went
nothing.
down
There's
as a
nothing
forfeit.
solid. There's nothing solid that I can
Yeah.
find, but it looks like it was something to do with his computer. And apparently, the main issue that everyone's complaining about is not that it was forfeited. It's just that no one said anything really.
Right.
And there was like a 10-minute. Like, apparently, it's pre-recorded, so there was a 10-minute break where, after the first game, they just left it going for 10 minutes, even though ESL would have known that the game 2 wasn't happening at all. So, I don't know why.
Quality
Someone needs a
production.
new
Yay. Just in time.
The last thing I will say is that I feel like Melon Cats, if they were in a different bracket, may have fared a lot better. I feel like they picked much better team comps, and that they seem to be much more aware of the macro game involved, just from the games we did see them play. But I mean, when you go against a lineup like H2K, it happens. You know, you're going to play a team that is just that good, and you're going to get knocked out. So, pretty much what we expected.
Right.
Yep.
So moving on to Gamers 2 and Faculty, our first of the 3 game series.
Hold on. And
Going
faculty,
into the
hereby forward known as Zazus and the Boys.
Zazus
and the
and
Boys.
Faculty is a bad name. Zazus and the Boys. Good job, Tom. Great name.
Is it too late to change their name entirely?
I really hope they could just change the name to Zazus and the Boys. It would be so much better.
I think they could change it to whatever they wanted to, couldn't they? Are they? Oh, are they
Well,
sponsored by?
they're sponsored by
whatever
and faculty, so
I don't know what that is.
So, and
but
Faculty should change their name to
Yeah,
Zazus
they should
and
just
the
change
Boys.
their
they,
company
can
name.
they can do that.
That's just a weird sponsor name.
Zazus and the Boys, presented by N Faculty. And N Faculty Production.
Why can't it be Faculty Esports, right? Like, not great, but better, or N Esports?
Because
Why does it have to
That
be
sounds like you have an HR department playing on Summoner's Rift now.
Oh, you know,
It's like, yeah, our team is we got Ethel, the receptionist, we got Bob from accounting, we got George, the dude who cleans the bathrooms,
And Zazus.
and Zazus.
These are all,
and
I love the
Zazus.
European Tom. I love the European accents to make it really, really solid.
I think that was more like Jersey, New York border.
Oh, I know
accent.
exactly what it was.
Is Bayonne. Bayonne's not in the United States, so
But let's be real. Ocelot tried to file an injunction with that HR department. Didn't work.
and henceforth he shall be known as Lossalot.
Hashtag Ocelot. Tweet it out. Let him know. Remind him.
I don't want to go that far, but every single time Gamers 2 has gotten into a situation where they are like, this kind of counts as like the challenger bracket. You know how like they play like the challenger playoffs to make it to the promotion tournament? Gamers 2 has never gotten out of those challenger playoffs. So you know how after this we move on to the 4 teams as a double elimination bracket? So this is like the Gamers 2 losing in the Challenger playoffs before getting to the actual part where they could get promoted. It happens every single time and in the same exact fashion. They lose the games that go on for about half an hour. And when they're winning a game, when they could close it out at like 21 minutes, they decide to let the game go for 60 plus minutes, put us to sleep, and then win the game, and then we go, shit, there's a third game after this one. Which is kind of how these games went. When it was game number 1 with End Faculty wound up taking the series 2-1. In case you missed that one. Or Zazas and the boys took the series 2-1. I'm not even using my own made-up name right now. Woo. So the first game was about 33, 35 minutes, and everybody on Gamers 2 was having a rough time. And it just looked like it just looked like Gamers 2, their playstyle hasn't changed since like season 1. Like they're sitting in their lanes, they farm up their lanes for as long as possible, and then they kind of group together for things and try to make team plays, but it looks like it's 5 players playing on a team with the same uniform that just so happen to meet up in the same solo queue game. There's no real clear calls, there's no cohesion, and the fact of the matter is, I don't know what it is about Gamers 2. It might be the fact that Ocelot just, for all he's done in the past, Ocelot just is not the player he was previously. And when you're consistently calling your jungler to mid lane or losing the mid lane matchup or not able to pick a mid lane champion that is mechanically intensive and a meta game pick at that point in time, and you're constantly losing the most important lane on the map when it comes to map pressure for objectives, you have to play for that ridiculously long, drawn-out game. And if one of your other lanes loses, like in these games here, Yuki in the bottom lane just did not look like he was playing well in games 1 and 3 this series. Even in game number 2 when they won, he didn't put up the fantastic numbers we're used to seeing him put up as an AD carry. But when you lose 2 of those lanes, there's no way for you to be able to stall out for that 60-plus minute game. And I feel like games 1 and 3 were very similar in the fact that the tempo was just in favor of Zazas and the boys, and G2 wasn't able to play that stall for forever and hope Ocelot becomes relevant game.
Yeah, and the big thing, I mean, when we saw Ocelot play Zed, he even got an assist early on and had a pretty, substantial advantage as Zed. And when you're ahead of Zed, you really don't need much to get a kill, especially at level 6. And the biggest thing that I saw was like, it was very clear that he wasn't comfortable either on Zed or with the pressure of like going in with his ultimate and committing to a kill like that, because that's really what he needed to be doing with that kind of pick, or he needed to be split pushing, or he really needed to be using that pick like to the fullest when he had that small lead, but he didn't do anything with it. And so as a result, like the pick became immediately useless because he was not able to play the champion in the way that it needed to be played. And instead they do the thing that they always do, which is, okay, we're behind. Why don't we, force 4 people into the bot lane to get 1 kill while 3 objectives are taken, and like that guy might make it out because we don't have our shit together, and because Ocelot cannot play champions as well as he needs to. And we saw that repeatedly until the enemy team had such huge gold advantages that they just swept them, just wiped right through them every time.
Like even in game number 2, when G2 does have a lead, it looks like they don't know what to do with it. Like, the best way for me to, I guess, describe Gamers 2 is they're like, for everything that Millennium did when they were in the EU LCS, you could harp on them for not being able to pick things that weren't that weren't, pick compositions. You could kind of harp on them for not knowing what to do once they knocked out of the outer ring of towers. But, like, at any point in this game, Gamers 2 logic is, we just got 3 kills. Let's farm our lanes again. Like, they just don't have...
It's all about that gold.
They don't have a dynamic playmaking capability. It looks like their shot calling is not there. And I hate to kind of bring in, like, outside things into the function of the actual team as they play, but this is a team that got rid of their living coach and Broken Shard because Ocelot said that having a living coach didn't provide anything for them, and he felt like that they didn't need it. And Broken Shard was like, well, if I'm not going to be here, you guys aren't going to listen to me. There's no point for me coaching from an outside perspective. So, yeah. And like looking at Gamers 2, it looks like they need a coach to let them know how to win games of League of Legends.
The thing for me is like Ocelot has consistently shown in the past that he is cocky, and I'm going to go so far as to say that he's arrogant. Like he is arrogant. He is. Yeah, okay, he's a giant fucking narcissist. Like the guy is obsessed with himself, and I'm sure what happened was Broken Shard was like, "Look, dude, you need to expand your champion pool," or "Hey, maybe we should find a new mid laner." And he's like, "Don't need a coach anymore. It's not working out." Like the only time like they did anything impressive this game was when their jungler came into bot lane and pulled off a pretty solid brush gank. And I think that has less to do with him being amazing and more to do with Obvious just not really reading very well or not reading the jungle very well. Because he could have been there too. And if Obvious had been bot and this turned into a 3v3, I mean, they would have won hands down. But this whole team, I think this whole team dynamic is pretty much just how much money can Ocelot pour into a team. And that's never going to make them win is basically the end of every one of the stories he starts.
It's just, I don't know, like, we were harping a lot on what Gamers 2 have done wrong, and I think it's because it's the most glaring, obvious things, like, Zazas and the boys, and faculty, for those of you just tuning in, it wasn't like they played anything that was spectacular, but they didn't play poorly either. They just played their game, and their game happened to be a little bit more team-focused, they happened to be a little bit more objective-based, and they just wound up being able to pressure out the enemy team, in a faster amount of time, which is kind of good to see because, I mean, this could have obviously been a very big snooze fest. I mean, last time we saw Zazas, he was playing on Roccat, who played like 40, 50-minute games in the EU LCS. This time around, we're seeing a team Zazas is on, and they're winning games at the 33, 35-minute mark, so...
I mean, and to be fair, like, when they got the lead, their play did slow down. And we might have seen 60-minute games coming out from N Faculty, too, from Zazas and the boys. But Gamers, too, kept throwing. Like, that same thing. Every time, that side lane, try to kill somebody, throw the game away. And they didn't, like, what are you going to do when they do make bad plays like that and bad rotations? I mean, you're going to punish them no matter how slow you want to play the game, no matter how much you want to cement that gold advantage. If someone throws an opportunity in your face, you're going to take it. And so when Gamers 2 rotated poorly or overextended or overcommitted to something, they just got to take so many free objectives.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. The Gamers 2 just, they've always had lackluster objective control. They've pretty much always had very, very subpar decision-making when it comes to how they're going to actually close out a game or what their objective control is going to look like, or do we bait them into a team fight and then push a lane down? Like, they just don't have the communication. In the past, it was them going in for bad fights. Like, JWoww would teleport into a situation where he shouldn't be there, or their AD carry was so far behind in a point where they were relying on him and he couldn't dish out the damage. This time around, it just looked like they just didn't know what to do against a team that was as organized, if not slightly more than them, when it came to actual objective-based in team play.
Well, speaking of not knowing what to do against an organized team, you can't say that that's a bad transition because it's pretty accurate.
Well, no, you went off of what someone else said, which I was really impressed by. You didn't.
It's not your own.
You didn't end the conversation being like, "Yeah, you're right." That sure was.
I was making eye contact with Serial on that.
I could tell. I knew you were.
Yeah, you can feel it.
And they had poor communication. Speaking of poor communication,
you guys apparently never watched Instalock Mid because that's all that was. It was just bad transition after bad transition. But Millennium versus Giants. And probably one of the bigger upsets in the EU LCS expansion to date. Giants taking Millennium in 3 games, 2-1.
Let's
Game 1.
Let's have Cereal Box talk about this.
How do your guys' words taste right now?
They taste
pretty good after last week.
I've got a giant boner for Korean players. I'm sorry, I'm a sucker. I just want to believe that they're the best.
I feel like
that really didn't work out for them.
Mott, you missed it last week. They said there was no chance the Giants could pull this off.
I feel like I could eat 1,000 of my words right now.
You're not too far off with Ryu. I'd say that I was really impressed with Ryu over the series of the games. He had a lot of really good picks, and he one-on-one, he did some really good damage.
I don't know about that challenge. I feel like this was Millennium that we saw in the promotion tournament against Unicorns of Love, but they replaced Kerp and Cottonex with a Kerp-like Korean and a worse jungler. I'm gonna get poached for that.
So here's the thing. I think Horo is mechanically a worse jungler, but I think on a team with 5 players who are more aware of macro game, he will always perform better. But
So
that being said, like in Korea he's a better jungler, but he's not in Korea. So you're right. I think at this point he is the worst choice for this tournament.
let's put it this way: the pick and ban phase from Millennium, game number 1. Lo and behold, they play a pick composition. Not only do they play a pick composition, but they play a double AP composition, something that they do every game. And Kevin in the top lane, the casters were saying how, Kevin looks like a better solid choice. He's not as shaky as he was at the end of last LCS split, etc., etc. He did the same thing he did in the expansion tournament, where he jammed the same pick every single game because that's probably all he was practicing.
But it worked the first time. Why wouldn't you just pick it for the next 2 games?
Because
even after
it
fails the
stopped
second time?
working.
They learn. Giants learn. And also, Tom, you're wrong. That wasn't a double AP comp. They did a triple to quadruple AP comp. Game. When you had Corki and either Annie or Nami as their supports, it was always just like, hey, you guys want to build an Aegis? That'll be a good idea.
Well, they did. Like in game number 1, it wound up kind of working out for them.
That was not a solid win. It was
not
back and forth the entire time.
I think the biggest thing we had to take away from this one was that Millennium was never in the driver's seat in this series, which is really, really weird because they came to this one, obviously, Sifa and I agreed, extremely heavy favorites over Giants. And even though, I had been with you guys hyping up Giants after their win at Paris Games Week, their win in the last round of the tournament, I didn't expect them to be flashy against a more established and roster full of quote unquote better players. But the biggest thing you took away from this one is in the mid lane, it's not ex-Peke, ex-Pepperoni.
Except not ex-Pepperoni. Pepperino.
It's Pepperino.
Pepinero. It's Pepinero. The caster said it wrong the entire time. It's Pepinero.
Ex-Pepinero, a.k.a. ex-Pepe, seemed to be...
Which is so great.
Which he just seemed to be going even if not outlaning Ryu. I mean, game number 1, he was playing Twisted Fate, which... Obviously, there's glaring weaknesses to the Twisted Fate play, and that he's going to be someone that wants to make plays happen around the map. When it came to the second dragon fight of the game, picks himself up a quadra kill in that game. Like, it just seemed like when it came down to, like, we hyped up the fact that Millennium have better players across the entire map. They have these 2 Korean players. They're going to be extremely good. The Korean players seem to be the weakest ones on the team. Ryu was not dominating mid lane. Horo was not making good decisions and was dying as much as Cottonex, but not picking up kills or assists.
You got to give Ryu credit that he did get some pretty clutch kills. And around the mid game, it did keep Millennium kind of tight in it, and they did end up winning that game.
It was not Ryu whatsoever. In game number 1, it was the 2-0-7 Kevin and the 7-1 in whatever Kraton. It was the 2 members that kept Millennium in the LCS the entire time that kept them in game number 1.
Well, and here's the thing. The thing that makes me think that, so Ryu's play, maybe not great. The reason that I was upset with them as a team is they got split pushed by a TF so hard. And I understand that happens, but you've played against that so much. And like watching him teleport into the bot lane with that Aurelia and just like, okay, free turret, whatever, like give it away because we're all just fucking around at Baron. Like that was awful. That right there ruined the entire series. I was just like, oh no, there's no way. There's no way. Because I knew the results beforehand because I watched the VODs after the matches, right? And I was like, man, when is this going to go wrong? And I saw that TF ult. And I saw that TF Quadra, and I was like, nope.
But the worst part is, even though all those plays happened, they won that game. Which leads me to believe that when Millennium kept picking similar team compositions to the other two games, they were like, we came back in the first game, we must have not done anything wrong, when they were not playing well in the first game at all.
Do you think there's maybe a chance that because it's a new team, and we've talked to death about communication things, but since it's a new-ish team with two very influential players in Ryu and Horo, is it possible that they don't really have that, I don't want to say a big champion pool, but as a team, like, don't have that big of a comp pool? Like, considering they pigeonholed themselves into Rumble, Corki, and then Ari twice, and what was it, Nami and Annie as their supports? Not really.
Jarvan and Kha'Zix.
Here's the thing. Jarvan and Kha'Zix, all very common. Corki, very common. Rumble, very common. All those picks make sense to me. Annie, I can see. And so picking those champions over and over again isn't so bad, but Ari, I don't understand the Ari pick. Like, why force Ari over and over again? Like, you have Corki. Just play Corki Xerath. It's like the best poke comp in the meta. It's reliable. It's easy. You don't have to outplay anybody, and you still have a ton of power in team fights. And if you're going to play Annie, like, much, much better pick for that. Because the second Annie stuns anybody, you just get to blow them up.
So, valid point / convenient excuse for the Millennium fans out there. One of the things that did happen when it came to Millennium, and we're talking about them preparing team compositions, preparing as a team, Horo and Ryu come over to EU post-patch 420. Every single champion we saw Millennium jamming and locking in were champions that were picked at Worlds. Like, power picks at Worlds. Corki, Rumble, Ari was picked up at Worlds, not seen, like, pretty much the rest of the season unless your name is Jesus and you played it questionably. But all these champions, besides the Annie pick, they were all jamming power picks from Worlds. Whereas on the opposite side, when we had Giants, they were picking things that we had seen Giants play before. You know, Twisted Fate, there was the Xerath, there were a bunch of different picks that were going on. That it just kind of seemed like Millennium was like, what was good on this patch again? Oh, yeah, Rumble. Let's play Rumble. What was good in the mid lane? Oh, yeah, Ari was at Worlds. Let's play Ari. It didn't seem like they really had thought it through.
It just doesn't make any sense to me because it's like there's so many games happening. The international scene is so active. Kaboom, like Brazil. Brazil is playing better team comps. Korea is playing better team comps. Southeast Asia is playing better team comps. They've watched other teams in this tournament play better team comps for this patch, and they have not figured it out themselves.
Well, you know what it is?
Perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. These are not teams that will make it into the LCS, period. It makes perfect sense.
Well, also, Millennium hasn't played a meaningful match since the since what, promotion tournament? They haven't been involved in a single tournament from what I can see. This is their first game of the expansion
They were in a Black Monster Cup, but that was on the more recent patch, I believe.
Okay, but I mean, they've played barely anything together, and that's 3 months from promotion when they didn't even have Ryu and Horo. So,
I think you think, oh well, we were in the LCS before. We've got two Koreans now. We'll walk through this. We'll just keep playing the same thing. It worked the first time. We just made some mistakes, and let's just get it in the next one. And boom.
Oh my bad! They beat Team Salsa in the Black Monster Cup, whoever that is.
Okay, Team Salsa. We'll take that down. We'll write that on their tombstone. RIP, we beat Team Salsa. Remember that.
Millennium still better than Salsa.
Still better than Salsa.
But you gotta give X Pepe the snipes that he had with Xerath.
Oh yeah,
those were some.
Great player.
What's that?
I thought he was a great player. No, I agree. He did really well that series.
In Game 2, he had some amazing plays. Game 2 is a lot more dominant. I mean, Millennium had a little bit of a lead in the beginning, and then they just kind of hit this point where, all right, we have our objectives cleared out. What are we going to do? Nothing. Just wait. Just hang out. Kind of farm a little.
They went to the Gamers 2 school of how to use a lead.
They're like, yeah, Ocelot uses this strategy. It's gonna work.
All right, so one thing I did notice when the big thing that was between Giants and the Millennium in this match, when Giants would win a fight, whether it was like whenever they were up a kill in a fight, like let's say it was like a 2-for-1 trade, Giants would then go somewhere and take a tower. They would go and push the advantage. When Millennium when Millennium took a fight, Millennium would, if it was a fight where they got 1 or 2 kills, they would, no matter what time it was spawning, if it was up or not, they would move into the bottom side of the blue jungle, put up a lot of wards, clear out wards, ward up around Dragon, and then recall. Millennium did not push a single tower or map objective besides Dragon unless they won a fight with 3 or more kills. And it was painful at some points because there was a point in the game where they picked up 2 kills, warded around Dragon. I believe this is game number 2, if I recall, because they were on red side in this game, so it might not have been game number 2. But they picked up 2 kills, pushed out, wound up warding up around Dragon and recalled. Then later on, waited for Dragon to spawn, got 3 kills, and were able to take a tower and then go to Dragon, where they lost a fight because they had waited too long on the respawn timers and then wound up losing a fight by Dragon. Which then Giants took the Dragon, took a tower, and everything was evened up, even though it only took 1 fight for Giants to do it, and Millennium it took like 2.5 to do it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just smells of poor communication on Millennium's side. I mean, unless the objective was very clear and obvious, they didn't really make enough moves fast enough. And maybe this is something they could have straightened out once they hit into the LCS and actually become a force, or maybe a force that just fizzles out by the end of the season, like is their history. But some things I kind of didn't like about Giants is they seem to be at a fault occasionally. It didn't happen too much, but they had a lot of aggression that ended up getting them in trouble. Game 2, when they pushed out the 2 Nexus turrets, grabbed both of those, but lost 2 on the way out. That could have been a little bit clearer and ended the game earlier. But we saw in Game 1, the fight that really lost in the game was a hop on Baron that ended up, having them get aced for only 3, and that was essentially the close of the game.
I really liked the Pepe play. Did you see okay, they didn't show it on screen, and I wish they would have gone back for it, but he 100-0'd Ari towards the end of the game, like over the base wall. Just one spell combo just completely obliterated him.
Yeah, they didn't catch that. And what was the one? He had it was I think it was game 2. He ulted Ari, and then who's their AD carry?
Adri? I don't know.
Yeah, Adri hit her with the Jinx ulti, and it was just 2 ultis, 0-0. It was awesome.
Also, one thing I really like about what Giants did is we talked about how I don't know, Millennium has that pick comp idea, and they kept that from honestly all 3 games. But Giants kind of evolved their team comp in game 2, and we'll talk about it a little bit later in game 3. But like they didn't have mobility in game 1. Like you can say they had like global mobility with just Twisted Fate. You have, I guess, the global ult with Jinx, but those aren't exactly champions that can get out of somewhere very easily.
You need to be in a fight to abuse that mobility. That's the thing.
Exactly. And so in game 2, they switched up, put Thresh as their support, somebody who can get somebody out of a fight using the Dark Passage. They went with Xerath that's a lot longer range, Jax that can jump away, Elise that can jump away. It's just much, much better at escaping fights. And in game 3, you switch over to Ezreal, Ari, Kha'Zix, and Alistar. Like, what is a pick comp going to do there? And that's what they did, which is nothing.
The pick composition is going to dive a level 7 Alistar with his ultimate up underneath the tower and give up a 3 for nothing. That's what it's going to do.
Communication issues, not any more apparent than when Horo dives onto... Sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I don't know if you guys want to talk game 2 anymore.
We're running short on time.
We're pretty much just power. It's the series. Now we're just talking about the series, I think.
They just jumped on an Alistar who was immediately able to, ult and prevent all of the damage that could ever happen to him under turret. And they, Giants came down, obliterated the entirety of Millennium. And that just kind of spoke for how game 3 went. They made a dumb play.
Alistar did buy potions in the beginning of the game, so he was going to win.
Potions win lane.
Yep,
that's how you win.
Somebody knows about that.
I just kind of feel like in game number 3, Millennium tried to switch up their team composition because they were jamming like these weird pick compositions with the Ahri and Rumble, and then they switched it up a little bit and they were taking the Jarvan away from Giants, and they mixed it up with the Orianna. But the Orianna pick was not nearly as mobile coming out of the mid lane as like the Ahri had been. and was not able to really roam around the map and make plays, whereas I believe Giants had Ari in game number 3 against Orianna, and there was a play where Ari was able to roam up and help out in I believe it was a double, not a double kill. There was a kill in top lane where they wound up chasing too far, and Kevin respawned and teleported in, and they're able to trade 1-for-1 in the grand scheme of things. But that was just Pepe being more mobile on the map than Ryu was in that game. And Millennium was kind of going for this big wombo combo, which is what we talked about earlier on in the podcast at some of these games. The J4, the Orianna combination, they threw the Rumble into this one. But because Millennium just didn't seem like they were experienced with a team fight composition, which is the direct opposite of that weird team comp triangle of a pick composition, that it was okay, well, Kevin's going to teleport in and he'll Rumble ultimate this way. And there was a dragon fight where Ryu never used his shockwave, even though he had the ball on Jarvan for half of the fight. And then Jarvan just wound up dying. They had to disengage and it fell apart from there in a 2-for-1 trade. And it just looked like that Millennium, after game number 2, where they realized that Giants were adapting their playstyle and adapting their pick and ban phase, they were like, oh, well, we're not going to go with that Ari pick. We'll go for something more team fighty because, Dragon is our big thing. That's what they're doing the entire game, is going towards Dragon Pit, warding around Dragon Pit, trying to get a fight at Dragon Pit so they can go and do something else. And it just didn't work out. It just seemed like they didn't know what to do with that composition.
I was so unimpressed, especially by game 3. I mean, just the lack of confidence in any of their calls, the glaring inconsistency in their calls, and you're right, that thing about the objectives that you said earlier about how they never had the confidence to do anything other than take Dragon, and when they did, it was often wrong. They never established deep ward coverage. They never really utilized anything particularly well. It was not the close match I was hoping for, and it wasn't only an upset. It felt like another game where we got to watch one team crush another team.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm disappointed. I liked Millennium last split, but this watching them play was just all right.
I think
Giants.
The biggest thing to take away from this one is because Giants did beat Millennium, and Giants were able to adapt across a best-of-3 series better than Millennium was able to do, but in games 1 and 2, Giants' biggest glaring weakness was the fact that they had these opportunities to close out the game or potentially play a little bit safer and extend a gold lead, where they were letting Millennium kind of crawl back into it. It cost them the game in game number 1. They were able to shore up those holes in game number 2 and force the side in game number 3, where they never let Millennium back into the game in that one. So one of the things I kind of want to, you kind of have to alert yourself to moving forward, because I don't know who Giants actually play in the first round of the 4-team bracket stage here.
Reason. It's Reason.
It's Reason. Okay, so against a team, like Reason that has a little bit more experience as a team than Millennium did in this one. If, I'm not going to say that Reason is a team that will exploit other teams' weaknesses and go on to win, because this is the team that is cursed with the MIM curse, where they look really good at the beginning of the game and then fall apart later on. So we'll have to see about that. But if Giants give up that much of a lead, or if Giants have a lead and they let a team come back into it that is more stable in their shot calling, or able to move beyond the Dragon Pit for fights, or know how to take objectives against them, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for them. I do like the fact that they're able to adapt over a 3-game series, which is something that not a lot of the teams of this tournament have shown the ability to do, even some of the teams with previous LCS members on them. But I still think their biggest weakness is going to be a morale thing. What happens if, Azazis and the boys take the first game in 30 minutes before they're able to kind of play that catch-up game? Are they going to be able to adapt as well when they're not hanging in there for as long? That kind of thing.
Well, the LCS is only for single games, though. I don't know if, I like that Giants looked good for the series, but that really doesn't speak too much for. Well, I don't think it speaks too much for how they would do in the LCS were they to make it.
Well, I'm more concerned. I was gonna say I was more concerned because they still have best of X series to play to get to the LCS.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. I think I think they still have they're not at all shoo-ins, even though I'm still picking them to take both LCS spots, as I said last week.
Because they're giant.
Speaking of our winners today, who do you guys think is going to move on to the LCS?
H2K and someone else.
I already made my pick.
I'm not gonna disagree with you on H2K. I'm gonna give it to Giants.
So we have Reason, we have Zazas and the boys, we have Giants, and we have H2K.
I really, really want. Oh god. Well, H2K. Okay, so H2K first off, and then I'm gonna go with Zazas and the boys, just because I'm really proud of us for that name. But I honestly have no idea. Like, it's so close, and I feel like all these games have been so one-sided that I really don't have a definitive measurement for these team skills, and so
I want to go.
That'd be impressive if it was those two, because they play each other first round.
never mind. I should probably leave a bracket.
I was going to.
They can still make it. It's double elimination.
It could still happen. It's double elimination. I'm actually going to side myself with H2K and MY. I mean Reason Gaming for this one. I just kind of feel like Reason Gaming may just be able to edge out based off of the fact that these guys have been playing with each other beforehand, even though Kuban left for a small stint on Gambit and then kind of came back, even though the only two remaining members of MIM are Kuban and Libic. I really like Take Fun in the mid lane. I think he's a very strong mid lane player. And so far in this tournament, it's really been about like whoever wins the mid lane matchup has been the team that usually winds up coming out on top. So I think I'm going to go with Reason and H2K for this one.
All right.
Well, let's wrap our discussion up this week with wonder if
Real
we
quick,
have,
picks
we
for
have
IM.
time.
Picks for IM, or just like
let's just do picks for IM.
Okay.
We do have the North American stuff coming up, but we can talk about that next week. That's a long way away.
Or 2
actually,
weeks.
now that I think
2
about it.
weeks.
2 weeks.
Because
Yeah.
IEM is next week, so that's the next big thing. We finally get to see LCS teams actually playing against other LCS teams.
Yeah, and we'll be able to see TSM. So the first round, we've got Pain Gaming and Cloud9, then Unicorns of Love and Lion Gaming. Is anybody going to make an argument for Pain Gaming?
We'll bring them Pain.
Pain might take a game. They will not win the series. Pain are much better than they used to be. Brazil is coming up as a region. I've been much more impressed with their play recently. Their macro game is greatly improved, but they have glaring weaknesses. And despite the fact that I think their players are mechanically skilled enough, this is something that was said to me by Emily Rand, who's a Brazilian expert. Brazil has the obscene weakness that whereas China team fights all the time and has to team fight nonstop, Brazil has to split push. And trying to do that against Cloud9 just isn't going to work. I just cannot imagine it working very well.
And it's also Cloud9.
Yeah, well, that too.
What are the chances Cloud9 deliberately throws this game to thank Kaboom for beating Alliance?
Slim to none. But what are the chances Alliance and Pain play off to the side and Alliance loses? Very high.
I mean, Brazil is the strongest region right now just because of Kaboom.
That's very true.
That one win, it's too good.
Definitely.
They have the unofficial
World
Championship belt. Yeah.
Did they lose to
about
Pain?
Lion?
Wait, hold
we can
on.
talk about that another time.
How about Lion Gaming and Unicorns of Love? That's a lot more interesting to me.
The power of evil! Yeah, I'm so excited for Unicorns of Love. Dude, I love that team. I love that mid laner. He's so good. He plays so much Zed. My Zed boner. I'm excited.
hope they don't suck. It's going to be the worst.
I really hope they don't suck.
I think people just love this team and be all hyped up for it, and then just have them go into the LCS and just lose every single game. Just hug the bottom of the bracket. That'll be terrible.
God, I love that. That's your professional as though podcasting professional opinion. I hope they don't suck.
That's everyone's professional opinion. We don't know shit about them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bottom of the bracket has a lot more bodies in there now, so even if they are stuck at the bottom, they'll at least be able to slap themselves against somebody else.
At least they'll be 7th,
not just
right? Like they can't
sit
be 10th,
there,
right? They have to be better than these two teams coming in. It's like a pity to Copenhagen Wolves, and if Unicorns of Love suck them too, that they're going to be better than two teams at least, right?
Wolves on Unicorns. That's what we'll be seeing.
Drake would
I'm really excited to see TSM in this tournament, given Santorin and given all the changes. Alliance, though, heyo, Reckless, let's do it. I'm pumped. I think they're going to take the whole tournament. That's my pick right there.
If we're going solely based on physical appearance of 80 carries, then yeah, I think they're gonna do pretty well. But
I don't know. I honestly think I think Honestly, I could see it coming down to another Alliance Cloud9 rivalry kind of deal. I think both of those teams pretty. Although unless the bracket doesn't line up that way, because I don't know.
Well,
Cloud9
it would be
play
that way.
Alliance.
It's Alliance's first round because it's if Cloud9 makes it out of round 1, they go straight to Alliance.
In that
They don't
case, it's
pass
going to
it.
be Alliance beating TSM. Like, I don't know.
The thing is like it's
So
been
unenthused.
off season.
It's like,
We've had so much off season time. We have no idea what to expect from these teams. Like I think this is patch 420 that they're playing on.
Yeah,
right?
it's going to be the first big tournament on 420.
Yeah, and so, like, what the hell? All I know for sure is that Rumble's still OP. Like, everything else is in the air. That's the only thing I'm comfortable with.
All you need to know is that you just pick Aurelia in the Rumble, and then Wicked has a champion he can play, and then Alliance is fine.
do you see this as a major advantage for these teams being able to play on this patch before they actually hit the LCS?
I think it's a slight advantage. I mean, the LCS is probably not going to be on 420. It's probably going to be on 421 or 422 because
true.
we have
Yeah.
over
I
a
thought you meant
month
going back.
between
It's
this.
gonna be like,
still.
why?
Some characters need some
So stupid.
changes, Warwick.
Yeah.
Oh my god, there's a lot of things that could use a decent amount of tweaking. Maybe the Scuttle Crab will make his victorious disappearance from the League of Legends.
It doesn't
scene.
make any sense. It ruined a very important part of the game.
I mean, if Millennium had the Scuttle Crab in their series against Giants, they might have been able to win because they would have been netting 35 gold every team fight.
Oh boy. All right. Any other picks from IEM?
I'm going to go out there and say, do I really want to go out there and say? No, I really don't want to say that. You know what? Screw it. Visit Chachi, you pick Poppy. You're losing the Leon Gaming.
I want to pick. I think I'm picking the team who's been in a bunker this entire offseason, and that team being Cloud9, because we haven't heard shit from them. Understandably, because they're not changing. But
You're too busy hanging out at Playboy with their
actually-
PG-13 World celebrations.
I'm actually wondering how much Alliance and Cloud9 have been scrimming each other, because Alliance has been in NA since before Thanksgiving, just practicing and preparing for IEM, which is what makes me think that they're going to do extremely well. I still think the entire tournament's going to be decided in the Cloud9 Alliance series. Whoever wins that is going to beat TSM, and that's the way the tournament's going to go.
If Cloud9 wins, I think that's like my optimum. I'd love to see Cloud9 TSM for the final, because it's kind of like the
first time we have an all North
American
final in a quote unquote international tournament since like season 2.
Yeah,
And that's exciting to me.
No
North American hype,
Koreans,
man. Let's
no
do it.
Chinese. I mean, like,
we set it up for this, just for this, guys.
we won an international tournament, guys! Yeah!
Riot throwing
pat
them
ourselves on the back, right?
If
You can
only-
do the expansion tournament, just make sure we have a North American international.
If
tournament.
only it was Kaboom playing instead of Pain Gaming, we might have the unofficial World Championship pass its way back to North America.
Oh my god, that would be the funniest shit of all time. Oh, that would be
It's in One America. It's in One America. It's just not ours.
If Alliance got beat by them again, that
Oh my gosh.
I would reference that every show at least once. We would have to find a way to sneak. I mean, we already basically reference it every show. But
No, it's very easy. The T-Force LCS rundown brought to you by Kaboom beating Alliance.
I don't know, guys.
Every single time.
I don't know, guys. That'd be a little bit reckless of us.
Oh, and with those puns of damage, we don't even have to Claude or Greg. That's going to be it for the show this week, because I think we've beaten this subject to death. Yeah.
Just
I
like
don't have the
Millennium.
ability to pause this, and I've been told that signing off isn't cool. So we're just going to hang out until Tom closes the stream.
I was
and my
waiting
chair
for the
starts to
sign off.
deflect.
Like, I'm sitting here, I have like OBS all open. I'm just like, all right, he's winding it down right now. He's going to be like, and that's it for the T4's LCS rundown. We'll see you.